Today, my guest is international talent. You may remember him from the WWE Cruiserweight Classic, Mr. Ho Ho Loon. How are you, sir?
Thank you for having me, Brian. This is Ho Ho Lun.
Thank you for taking the time out to come on today to talk a little bit about your career.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's 10 o'clock here now in Japan. Well, I know it's pre-recorded, but yeah, 10 o'clock in Japan.
So, what made you get into professional wrestling?
As you know, I grew up in Hong Kong. Um, there there weren't there were WWF
Hmm.
aired in the cable TV in Hong Kong back in 1997 something when I was a kid. Start watching it. Um, feel like they're pretty cool and want to be one of them. So I've talked about this story for a lot of time, but I want to say it again. So I asked my mom to, can you bring me to a wrestling school? She said, yes, of course. Um, I went there for 2 years and then realized that that's the judo class. Um, but then, yeah, judo is not bad. It's still really fun thing. But there's no wrestling or anything related,
Yeah.
happening in where I grew up, Hong Kong. So I did wrestling for a few years until I realized no, there's no wrestling in the whole of China. That was like 2005 or something. So should I give up this dream? No. At the same time, there's a person who's named The Slam, like Body Slam, The Slam.
Hmm.
He's an exchange student from Korea. He moved back to China. So he's a Chinese dude who, do exchange student in Korea, and he received some wrestling training over there, and then he know how to build a ring. So he built a ring here in a city called Dongguan, which is about 50 miles away from Hong Kong. So I start traveling every weekend Hong Kong to Dongguan and start training with him, and that's how I started.
So where you were, there was no wrestling schools around, or was it just not in that area at all at that time?
So the whole of China, or
Hmm.
actually I should say, during 2005, 2006, the only wrestling thing that exists in Asia is in Japan. Other
Hmm.
than that, there's nothing at all.
So, how hard was it when you started training for professional
Um,
wrestling?
yeah, even the slam is he is the probably the first person.
Hmm.
Um, it's not probably he is the first person who bring wrestling into China, and I'm lucky enough he lived not very far from where I was.
Hmm.
I was able to travel every week, to start learn some basic technique, and then I have some fundamental from the judo class that I learned while I was a kid. I picked it up, pretty quickly. I basically start the wrestling scene in Hong Kong and in China. Slam and I,
Hmm.
we know each other for 20 years, and then we start something back in 2006, 2007, and then until 2009, I was like, okay, when Slam can do it in Dongguan, maybe I can do one in Hong Kong. That's how I found Hong Kong Wrestling Federation, HKWF.
Now, how hard was it to start something like that in your area?
That was not easy at first. Even WWE was on TV,
Hmm.
um, on and off. It's on and off because it always get complained about the violence and all the things like that. And wrestling is something really new to the audience
Hmm.
in China. And we used to watch a lot of sports, like sport,
Hmm.
not sports entertainment, like sports. When you used to watch sports and you see someone bringing a chair and breaking some tables in a wrestling, they don't call it wrestling match. They call it wrestling game. It's like the
Hmm.
NBA game and football game. People just can't process it. You know what I mean? If
Hmm.
it's a sports and you bring table and chairs, um, it was really hard. Even WWE have a difficult time putting on, on television show. So we start small. We start with 50 audience coming in on our first show. That was 2009 June. I still remember. We trained ourselves for about a year and a half, and then we start doing our own show. It's inside a little warehouse. Um, no air conditioning. It's super hot in the middle of June,
Hmm.
35 degree in the outside, and inside is probably 37 degree. But like 50 people come in, they watch it, they enjoy it, and then we start from there.
So, what was it that made you want to start your own federation?
I've watched wrestling since I was 7 years old, and I always wanted to be one of them.
Hmm.
But there's none that exists in where I live, which is Hong Kong, and even China. Slam is the only one who, put on a wrestling ring,
Hmm.
which is, well, he actually put the wrestling ring on top on his in his house. He got a house, like three-floor house, and he's put his wrestling ring on this on the top rooftop. Um, so if there's no wrestling in China, maybe I can create one and
Hmm.
do something. I always feels like wrestling is something that people watch it, and I'm sure people who watch it, who get into it, will enjoy it a lot.
Hmm.
That's the motive.
When you were doing these shows, were you still wrestling outside of your federation?
Um, no, because the only wrestling happening in Asia is only Japan, and we
Hmm.
are the first batch of you see now wrestling in they
Yeah.
got wrestling in Singapore, in Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand. They all start after us. It's like 2012, 2013, and then they just started. So we are almost the first wrestling company in the region. There
Hmm.
was some wrestling in Taiwan that I know of. They start about like a year
Hmm.
before us. But we all start really small. I mean, um, yeah, I only start wrestling more in the outside after 2012 when there's more wrestling, happening in Singapore, Thailand, and things like that.
So, how was it starting your own federation and you're growing it, and now there's other federations coming into your close to your area, and then you're starting to branch out?
Yeah, I mean, they're all my good friends, promoter in Singapore, promoter in Thailand, China. There's more wrestling coming in China now. They've come, some company up north, you know, near us. There's a few wrestling companies as well. Um, and yeah, all of them are good friend of mine. And during 2011, we closed down that warehouse that I just mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, I closed it down, and then I take the opportunity to went to the UK. That's my first real excursion to the outside, because we have trained ourselves for 2 years now, and we don't see anyone who actually doing this for a long time. So yeah, I fly myself to the UK and spend 6 months there, and want to prove myself if the self training are
Hmm.
correct enough to be on the standard. And luckily, that was okay. Um, that's how I started, um, uh, and that's how I start out, and people start knowing this name, Ho Ho Lun. And in 2012, I went to Japan as well.
Hmm.
Um, did a more extensive tour, not just in the UK, but to the whole of Europe, Spain, Portugal, in 2013. And then this is how I started. And then I come back to Asia, Singapore, they got the wrestling company happening. It started about 2012, and I first wrestled in Singapore 2013. And, um, you know, by that time, 2013, I only wrestled for 4 years, but I have more experience than
Hmm.
most of them because I've experienced in Europe and Japan. So I know how hard it is to start something from ground zero.
Hmm.
So I give them some advice because I don't want them to spend some how should I put it in word? So I've spent some unnecessary time
Hmm.
during these 4 years because I made mistakes.
Yes.
Um, I marketed wrong or something like that. I explained to them this is what happened to me during the first 4 or 5 years when I promote shows in Hong Kong. So Singapore is a really similar market.
Hmm.
Maybe you can try this out, try that out, this kind of advice. And then, yeah, then they're doing so good now. And I'm actually coming back to Singapore this November for their 12th anniversary show.
That's amazing. How was it branching out finally and like going to the UK, going to Japan, going to all these different places? Was that scary in a way, or were you ready for that adventure?
Um, it feels scary at first, going to the UK for my first trip
Hmm.
because obviously I really not sure if the training, self-training for 2 years you know, am I up to that standard?
Hmm.
Um, but it end up going to all these trips just give me more confidence to
Hmm.
myself, and then that's how eventually it bring me to America, NXT and things like that, and now work in DragonGate, watch DragonGate since I was a kid, and I'm here now in my 5th year in DragonGate. So yeah, this is what a journey.
Before we get to WWE, when Dragon Gate came over here, I used to work on the production team for Dragon Gate
Oh,
USA's.
really?
Yeah, so like Shima and Naruki Doi and Stalker Ichikawa, all them people. Like I got to work with him 2010 through 2012 or
Oh,
13. So that was my
oh,
introduction to that, and that was a fun time.
yeah. Yeah, Ichikawa, yeah, it's fun to talk about Ichikawa. He's having his retirement tour. He's retiring this December. So he got a few more matches coming up before he retires. So that's November 3rd. That's his next match.
That's
Looking
pretty.
forward to it.
That,
He's the only one who can do all that.
I
Nobody else.
know. I always enjoyed watching him.
Yeah.
So when you did this, what you went to the UK, you did Japan, and you came. What caught WWE's eye with you? How did that start to come to be?
I think I'm just lucky enough to be there at the right time because 2016, obviously, they run the Cruiserweight Classic. This is a concept where they bring all the
Hmm.
cruiserweight wrestler into Florida and produce this tournament. And I'm just lucky enough to be the representative of China and then be there and then eventually got offered to stay with them with NXT for another year. So yeah, I'm just a lucky guy.
Now, was that a scary transition? Because that's like
That
what they.
was
Yes.
that was. I wrestled in the UK, wrestled in Japan, but I've never wrestled in America, and that's my first match in America, and that was in Full Sail University,
Hmm.
and that's obviously that's an NXT arena, and there's Triple H there, there's William Regal there, A Train was there,
Hmm.
and I was like, is it real? I still don't know if it's real. Even to that day, to even before I come up the curtain, I still it still didn't feel real to me
Hmm.
until I actually did my first match. And then I start living in Florida for like a couple of weeks, and then I know, okay, I'm here now.
How long after that initial Cruiserweight Classic did they offer you to stay for like a full-time deal?
Um, I've, I can't remember. I think it's after match one.
Hmm.
It's right after, and then well, probably match. Oh, I can't remember. Probably match two, round two. After round two,
Hmm.
and then sit me down and talk about this, and then at the same time they've hired. Not at the same time. That was like 2 months later. Well, actually, the timeline is this. I went to a trial in Shanghai probably in May or June 2016.
Hmm.
So I went to that tryout, and then June I go to Cruiserweight Classic. And then like July, August, I did round two, and then they've told me, not they've told me, they've actually announced that they've hired seven other Chinese athletes from
Hmm.
that Shanghai tryout to be moving over to Orlando. Um, and obviously, I'm the only person who speak both Chinese and English, and have the experience starting a promotion, have the experience of leading a team of zero wrestling background into
Hmm.
something. So I think, other than the in-ring performance, this kind of experience outside the ring and producing and all that caught their eye of letting me stay with doing the rest of my job.
Was that an easy decision for you to make?
Of course, if it's WWE, if it's WWE, if WWE call me like later on, I'll pick up my phone and say, "Yeah, I'm coming."
So, what was your initial thoughts of the WWE style of wrestling and training?
um, it's it's so different from what we do, what I did in the past. What I did in the past, UK, Japan. First of all, the scale. Even though NXT, we did some Florida tour for in front of 300-400 people. But sometime when we go back to Full Sail and we did like bigger show is bigger crowd.
Hmm.
And then there's a lot more to produce at the back. You got a producer for each matches. Usually when we wrestle in indie, there's just one line, two line. Yeah, just go there and have fun and do all this and that. You got 10 minutes and I got 10 minutes.
Hmm.
But NXT, they are a TV production company. You know, we got to, the time got to be strict, and there's some certain thing you need to do, and there's some certain thing you can't do. Um, at first, it's hard to. There's so many things happening in your mind.
Hmm.
Before NXT, I just go to the ring and know what's going on in the match, and that's it. After I go to NXT, I can process more in my mind. That's the stuff that I learn, and I come here, that's do this, do that. You know.
Hmm. Was there any particular coaches that you worked with more or liked to work with in NXT?
When I was there, I only worked with two coaches, Norman Smiley and Ruby Brookside, and both of them, treat me really, really well. Um, I managed to meet Brookside, um, I think 2019, and they come to Shanghai once again, and I left the WWE 2017. But then 2019, they did another trial in Shanghai, and I got invited to be there as well. And I met Robbie Brookside, and we still talk a lot about the past, the happy moments.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, during 2009, I remember there was a lot of news coming out about they want to do a performance center here and there, India, China, UK, right? They did NXT
Hmm.
UK eventually. Um, and yeah, there's plan to do something in Asia. I think that's why I got invited. I think, but then nothing happened. Yeah, it's. I would love to be there again if there's a chance.
So, how was your time in NXT?
Um, Half of my job, as I said, coordinating things with
Yeah.
all these Chinese talents. Because almost like half of them, they have never. Just knock the door. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah, half of them have never have any overseas experience. They've never traveled outside China, and they speak zero English. So I got to help them, settle there in Orlando. Some of them have a little bit experience overseas, but all of them have zero experience in professional wrestling. Um, some of them come in like they know why are we pinning 1, 2, 3. I mean, pinning 1, 2, 3 means that's how you win a match, and
Hmm.
They didn't know it. They, they still didn't. They're still finding out the rules
Hmm.
how to do professional wrestling. Um, these are the things that I help them out. Settle in Orlando and explain to them what the basic wrestling is. Um, Half of the job, of course, performing on TV. I am lucky enough to be on NXT TV for about like 6, 7 times, I
Hmm.
think, during my 1 year and 3 months in NXT. So I think that's good enough. Um, I remember at that time NXT there was like 120 superstars over there in NXT. So there's only like 10 spots,
Hmm.
15 spots per TV episode. Um, so I'm really grateful to be able to be there a few times. And yeah, actually, you know what? There's a little bit of regret of myself. I actually asked for my release during 2017 because of family issues. But that's life.
Hmm. Have you had any conversations since requesting your release besides the when you saw them in 2019 about potentially coming back?
um, yeah, and then I think during 2021 I did a US tour. I spent 3, 4 months in the US. I wrestled for like MLW,
Hmm.
AEW, and GCW, all that promotion. But that was during. I remember I did try to contact a little bit, but that was during the COVID season, if you can
Hmm.
remember that. And
Yeah.
nobody is encouraged to meet anybody.
No. That was a bad. It seemed like a lot of people were in that position where they had left or requested the release or they were
Yeah,
released.
so 2016 I was there at the right time, and
Uh,
2021 I was there at the wrong time.
it just seems like there were so many people that could have been hired or should have been hired during that time period, but I understand why they were not seeking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why. Yeah, I spent 3 months in the US during 2021, then come back here in Dragon Gate, and I'm happily here in my fifth year now.
Good. So how is life after WWE?
Um, I left WWE for family reason. My mom was not really healthy, so I
Hmm.
want to stay near my mom, to spend time with her. And at the same time, I got a job offer in Macau. If you know this city, Macau is the Las Vegas of China.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of the casino complex going on, and there's a lot of entertainment activity going on. And this casino complex hired me to be a producer for a Mexican wrestling circuit, which will go on for about 1 year. So I took that job, and at the same time, I'm able to spend a lot of time with my parents during that time. Um, Spent 2 years in Macau, and then I got an offer from DragonGate. That was 2019. Then they said, "Oh, Ho Ho Lun, are you interested to come in and wrestle for 3 months?" I said, "Okay." I actually met DragonGate when they did the Hong Kong tour. 2018, they did a few Hong Kong tour, and I was the
Hmm.
Hong Kong coordinator for the ring and challenge and everything. So I think some fans enjoy seeing me. That's why I got called up for wrestling here for 3 months, and then I extended for another 3, 6 months, and then COVID happened, and then I think, oh, okay, I'll just stay in Japan. I think it's a 2 weeks off, and it ended up like 4 months of doing nothing. But that was that opportunity, and that was the turning point that they want to let me stay here forever.
Good. So how is working for Dragon Gate and wrestling all over?
Um, Dragon Gate, the first couple of years, I only involved in the wrestling. After 2021, after my US tour, I came back and I actually took up more of the backstage work. As you see, wrestler like Yamato, Shun Skywalker, Big Boss Shimizu, they actually came into the US quite often after 2021 because I start taking the responsibility of booking, talent. How do you call that? Talent relation
Hmm.
kind of. responsibility here in DragonGate. So I'm happy to be that. Um, and this year we were in Philadelphia for a week, wrestling for 6, 7 other shows, and I'm part of that, and I'm actually producing that. And next year we are planning something for Las Vegas.
I'll have to
Something, something.
something.
I don't know what is that yet, but something.
I'll have to make a trip out when that something happens.
Yeah. Where are you based, man?
I'm out of Indiana,
Okay, okay.
so I'm like,
Yes, come down to Las Vegas if something happens.
yes, yes, keep me informed, and I would happily
Yeah.
be make the trip out there. Where can people reach out to you at?
Um, During these few years, I actually worked really closely with GCW, of course, with DeFi,
Hmm.
with Prestige. A lot of, the most, those promotions who run
Hmm.
regular shows like DeFi, they run like once every month. Um, Prestige as well, DPW as well, MLW,
Hmm.
Um, we communicate with each other, very regularly. When there's a Japanese talent, we're sending over to stay in the US, and then we always talk about that. Other than that, yeah, these are the major company that we work with,
Hmm.
and we will work with them for the future.
Do you have any appearances in the U.S. coming up soon?
If something happened in Las Vegas, I'll definitely
Okay,
come in.
okay. Fair enough. Uh, Social media, where do people reach out to you for that?
Um, Twitter, X, and Instagram, Ho Ho Lun 719.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking a little bit about your career. Thank you for what you've done for professional wrestling and what you continue to do. It seems like you really are passionate about professional wrestling and you're wearing a lot of hats and learning as much as you can. And that is I like when people get that passionate about it and love for this sport. I like to see that.
Thank you very much for having me today. English is not my first language, so apologize for if there's something
No,
that's misunderstandable.
no, understood you loud and clear. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
And if there's ever anything that I can do, please feel free to reach out.